This just detonated. Trump's power hit a wall as a judge froze his assets nationwide after hidden bank accounts were exposed in court. Not a slap on the wrist, a full lockdown. Towers, clubs, cash, everything paralyzed. Chaos everywhere. The self-proclaimed billionaire couldn't post the bond, and suddenly the cover-up cracks wide open. Offshore money, shell games, a financial meltdown unfolding in real time. This isn't politics, it's a collapse. Campaign cash strangled. Legal defenses gasping. Allies walking out, enemies circling, democracy watching. Is this the fall they tried to hide, or the beginning of something even bigger? Stay right here.
We have been listening to live Supreme Court arguments over the authority to impose tariffs, whether President Trump has that, to impose sweeping tariffs without Congress's approval. Now, what he has been using is a national emergency law to do so. It's the linchpin of his economic agenda, these tariffs. Now, based on what we've heard, the outlook doesn't seem to be all that great for the president, who earlier this morning called these arguments and the forthcoming decision that they will make in the Supreme Court life or death. We're going to talk about what we've heard so far with an incredible panel here. Steve Vladeck, I want to start with you. What is your take on this? And again, I know we're kind of in the weeds on tariffs, but I just want to remind our viewers that this is about so much more. This is about presidential power and whether Donald Trump has as much as he thinks he does.
Dan, it's such an important moment for the court and the country. We've had so many rulings by the U.S. Supreme Court in Trump cases over the last 9 months, but they've all been in this frenetic.
Look, I want to open with something uncomfortable but important. A lot of people are sharing a story right now because it feels satisfying, not because it's proven. The headline vibe is Trump's assets are frozen, hidden accounts exposed. The walls are closing in. And I get it. People want a clean moment of consequence. People want a headline that finally matches the scale of what they've watched for years. The grift, the lies, the intimidation. The rules are for other people energy. But if you care about democracy, if you care about the rule of law, then you don't get to trade truth for dopamine. Because here's the thing. Authoritarian movements thrive when the public stops caring what's true. They don't even need everyone to believe their lies. They just need everyone to believe that nothing can be known, that everyone's spinning, that facts are just weapons. And when we share stuff that isn't airtight, even if it's on our side, we help create that fog. So tonight, I want to do two things at the same time. One, I want to talk honestly about how these dramatic legal claims spread and why they're tempting.
Political or economic significance, you got to go through Congress because we got these different branches of government that are all co-equal. What Trump is essentially saying is, I have an emergency. It's called a trade deficit. And as a result of that, I need to take action that makes me go around Congress. Well, the other side saying, that's not the emergency. You still got to go through Congress to do so. That's why you're hearing things about delegation. Has Congress given the power of the purse and taxation and leveraging tariffs back to you in some way? They're saying.
And two, I want to zoom out and connect it to the larger pattern we're living through right now. Power without accountability, the MAGA movement, trying to normalize the idea that law is optional for the leader and mandatory for everybody else. Because even if a specific viral claim turns out to be exaggerated or wrong, the bigger story is real. We're watching a political movement test whether American institutions can hold the line. Now, if you've seen this claim about a sweeping nationwide asset freeze, your first instinct might be, finally. But let me slow you down. That phrase, nationwide asset freeze, isn't just dramatic language. It's a specific kind of court action. It would be public, it would be documented, it would be everywhere. It would trigger a cascade. Lenders, partners, vendors, and other courts reacting. So when you see a YouTube transcript confidently describing the freezing of everything, real estate, jewelry, art, bank accounts, family-linked properties, your next move should not be share. Your next move should be, where's the order? Where's the docket? Who else is confirming it? This isn't nitpicking. This is the difference between building a democracy culture and building a rumor culture. And here's why this matters. Trump has trained people, supporters and opponents, to think in cinematic terms. Every day is a cliffhanger. Every court moment is the end. Every headline is the bombshell. That's not how accountability works. Real accountability is boring. It's procedural. It's timelines and filings and appeals and constraints. But the internet doesn't reward boring. The internet rewards emotional certainty. And that's exactly why you see disinformation ecosystems, especially right-wing ones, but not only right-wing ones, turn complicated legal situations into simplified narratives. Because the simplified narrative is easy. Trump is a villain. Villains must have a downfall. Therefore, any story that sounds like downfall is basically true. But democracy requires more discipline than that. Here's a better way to think about it. Trump's entire political identity depends on two myths. Myth number one, he is strong. Myth number two, he is rich. Strength is the I alone can fix it myth. Wealth is the I'm a genius businessman myth. And both myths serve the same purpose. They create a sense that Trump is above normal judgment. If he's strong, you don't question him. If he's rich, you assume he knows what he's doing. If he's strong and rich, you interpret every failure as persecution, not consequence. So when you see these viral stories attack his wealth, he can't post bond, his empire is frozen, he's hiding offshore, they're aimed right at the center of the brand. And that's why they spread. They feel like they're striking the right target. But again, feeling right is not the same as being right. Now, let's talk about the part of this transcript that is clearly in a real public conversation. Supreme Court arguments about tariffs and presidential power. This is one of those issues that sounds technical, but it's actually foundational. Because tariffs aren't just the policy, tariffs are taxation. And in a constitutional system, taxation isn't supposed to be a personal tool. Congress is supposed to be involved. That's the point of checks and balances. You can't have one person waking up and deciding, today we tax this, tomorrow we tax that, based on political impulse. But what you're seeing in this era, and Trump is a big driver of it, is the attempt to stretch emergency powers to cover basically anything. And that's the pattern. Declare an emergency, use emergency authority, bypass Congress, dare anyone to stop you. And when someone does stop you, call them illegitimate. That's not just a policy fight, that's a system fight. And it connects directly to the broader pro-democracy argument. We can disagree about tariffs, but we can't normalize executive power becoming personal power. Because if the president can do it for tariffs, what else can they do it for? Immigration, speech, protest, elections, media. The list is endless. So when the transcript says, this is about presidential power, that part is true in the civic sense. It is about power. But the transcript then whips into this grand story about asset freezes and hidden accounts, and it's stitched together like a dramatic montage. And that's another red flag. It's a very online way of speaking. One big crisis glued to another big crisis, creating an emotional everything is collapsing narrative. And I need you to understand something. That everything is collapsing narrative is also a tool. Sometimes it's used by MAGA. The deep state is taking him down. Sometimes it's used by anti-Trump content. He's done. He's finished. Either way, it can distort reality. And a distorted reality is dangerous because it makes people misjudge the moment we're in. So here's the pro-democracy approach. Clear-eyed, evidence-based, disciplined. Trump's legal problems are real. Trump's ethical problems are real. Trump's history of deception is real. Trump's movement's authoritarian tendencies are real. You don't need to invent new facts to make that case. In fact, inventing new facts makes the real case weaker because it gives the other side ammunition. And MAGA loves that. They love when you oversell. They love when you share one thing that's sloppy because then they can scream, see, fake news, and use that to dismiss everything, including the stuff that's proven. That's why I'm strict on this. Now, let's talk about hidden bank accounts. Again, offshore accounts and shell companies in and of themselves are not automatically illegal. Rich people use them all the time. The legal question is how they're used. Are they disclosed properly? Are they used to evade taxes? Are they used to hide assets from courts? Are they used to deceive lenders? Those are serious allegations, and when they're serious, they come with serious documentation. And if there's one lesson we should have learned by now, it's that this entire era is a war over documentation. Because Trump's style is not, I have evidence. Trump's style is, I have a vibe. People are saying, many such cases. Everyone knows. That's authoritarian rhetoric. It's the replacement of proof with insistence. So when we respond to that with our own version of people are saying, we're not fighting authoritarianism. We're copying its method. And the method is the threat. Let me put it in plain English. A democracy can survive bad politicians. It cannot survive a public that stops caring about truth. That's why, even as we talk about Trump's finances, we have to keep our feet on the ground. Here's what we can say without turning into a rumor channel. Trump has a long history of inflating his image. Trump has been found liable for fraud in civil contexts. Trump has faced huge financial judgments and appeal constraints at different times. Trump has repeatedly used legal fights as fundraising fuel. Trump has built a movement that attacks courts when courts check him. Those are all part of the pattern. And what's the pattern? The pattern is accountability is treated as oppression. If Trump loses in court, it's rigged. If Trump faces investigation, it's witch hunt. If Trump is criticized, it's censorship. If Trump's power is limited, it's deep state. That's the authoritarian move. Redefine accountability as tyranny. And the goal is to flip the moral order. In a healthy democracy, law enforcement is legitimate when it is evidence-based and equal. In an authoritarian narrative, law enforcement is legitimate only when it targets enemies and illegitimate when it targets the leader. That's what Lock Her Up was about. Not justice, power. And that's what I'm being persecuted is about, protection from consequences. So when you hear any dramatic claim about Trump being frozen or blocked, or unable to access money, it plugs into a real tension. Can the legal system treat him like everyone else? That's a fair question, and it's why people latch onto these stories. But here's the danger. If you convince yourself that the system has already delivered maximal consequences when it hasn't, you can get complacent. You can start living in a fantasy timeline where democracy has already been saved. And the truth is, democracy isn't saved. It's contested every day. Now, let's connect this to the everyday stakes, because it's easy to talk about courts and power like it's abstract. It's not abstract. When presidents claim emergency powers to bypass Congress, that filters down. It filters down to whether your workplace is stable, whether prices spike because of chaotic tariff policy, whether government agencies get staffed by loyalists instead of professionals, whether law enforcement gets politicized, whether protests are treated as civic engagement or treated as security threats. And it filters down to whether the public believes anything at all. Because once you lose the shared reality, you lose the ability to solve problems together. And that's the real reason disinformation is not just annoying. It's national security risk. It's societal risk. It's civic collapse risk. And MAGA has been one of the most aggressive forces pushing that collapse, not just with election lies, but with the constant undermining of every institution that can check power. The press is the enemy. The courts are corrupt. The civil service is doot state. Career experts are traitors. Independent watchdogs are partisan. What's left then? Only loyalty to the leader. That's the structure of authoritarianism, always. So when we talk about Trump's finances, whether it's judgments, bonds, assets, whatever, it's not just gossip. It's connected to the bigger question. Does the leader accept that the law applies to him? And if he doesn't accept it, does the system enforce it anyway? And that's why the Supreme Court arguments about tariffs matter too. It's the same question with different clothing. Can the system tell him no? Now, I want to address something I know some people will say. Why are you spending time fact-checking a story that hurts Trump? Isn't that helping him? No, it's helping the country. Because truth is not a partisan tool. Truth is a civic resource. And if we turn truth into whatever helps our side, then we've already lost the democracy argument. A pro-democracy movement has to be built on credibility. And credibility comes from being honest, even when it's inconvenient. That's how you build trust. That's how you persuade people who aren't already with you. That's how you reach the middle. The exhausted majority that doesn't live on political Twitter and doesn't want to be lied to by anyone. Because let me tell you, most Americans don't wake up wanting propaganda. They wake up wanting stability, fairness, and some sense that the people in charge are not playing games with their lives. And that's why a disciplined, reality-based critique of Trump is more powerful than an exaggerated one. It's not weaker, it's stronger, because it can't be waved away. So what's the clean takeaway here? The takeaway is not Trump's assets are definitely frozen, or Trump has definitely hidden accounts, or it's all over. The takeaway is this era is a test of whether institutions and citizens can resist the temptation to treat reality like a team sport. And that test is happening everywhere, in courts, in Congress, in the media, and in our own behavior online. So let's talk about what accountability should actually look like, so you don't get pulled into fantasy timelines. Accountability looks like court rulings that are documented and appeal tested, investigations that produce evidence, financial disclosures that are verified, policies that are blocked when they exceed lawful authority, elections that are protected by transparent processes. It looks like process, and process is frustrating. It's slow. It doesn't give you the clean emotional arc. But process is what separates democracy from authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is, I decide, and the story is whatever I say. Democracy is, we follow rules, and the outcomes are constrained by law. And if you want a patriotic ending to this, not a partisan ending, it's this. The American experiment is not that we will always pick the right leaders. The American experiment is that we built a system designed to survive wrong leaders. A system where no one is supposed to be untouchable. A system where truth matters more than loyalty. A system where power is not personal property. And yes, it's imperfect. Yes, it's been abused. Yes, it has failed people. But it's still worth defending. And the way you defend it is by refusing to become the thing you're fighting. So when you see a headline that feels like the perfect comeuppance, pause. Ask for the receipts. Ask who else is confirming it. Ask whether it's stitched together for outrage. Because if we can keep our heads, if we can stay reality-based, then the disinformation machine loses its strongest weapon, confusion. And if confusion loses, democracy gains. That's the through line I want you to carry forward. Not Trump is finished. Not the system has finally got him. But we are not surrendering truth. Because the moment we surrender truth, we surrender the republic.